Hello, everybody. Be Fun here, standing in front of my cool new aquarium, which is the latest and rather unexpected addition to my waterfall inn here at my cavern resort on Ragnarok. So we got a little update yesterday from Eco to her garden decor mod. And among a couple of fixes she did, which I've been waiting for, thank you, Eco, she also added a new item she's calling it decorative water. And I read about it on her Discord, and I was anxious to take a look at it, so I jumped on as soon as I could yesterday with the idea that it would allow me to upgrade my water fountain down on the plaza, which indeed it did, and I'll show you that in a second. But while I was playing around with that, I figured out you could use it to build aquariums. So a little bit different video today. I thought I would do a little spotlight on that item and give you a little demo of what I've learned so far and how I went about doing this. And then there's another little thing I'm going to be doing that's a bit different, and that is recording during the day. I normally record late at night because I live in proximity to an airport, and I get some airport noise as a result, which makes it difficult for me to record during the day. But I want to be able to do that. I want to get this video out right away, for one. So I thought I would try it this time around and see how it goes. It's going to result in a little more editing for me, and probably more cuts during the video while I pause during one of these flyovers that will drown me out otherwise. But we'll check that out and see how that works out. And hopefully, oh boy, huge rubber band. Oh gosh, this server's getting laggy. Okay, so here's the water fountain addition I made, or upgrade. If you watched my first episode, and if you haven't, you really ought to. It was a lot of fun. You'll know that I did this originally vanilla, which is all we had back when we started the server. And what I had done was just use painted foundations like the center there out into these sections to simulate a water fountain, which was the best I could do at the time. But now with this new addition of decorative water, I was able to replace those with this item. It includes some animated fish in it. Very cool. Let's just jump out here and get a little higher view over this thing. So now I have my little water fountain is now kind of like a little koi pond, or I guess coelacanth pond in this case. All right, so let's run on over to my building center, and I'll show you what's going on with this mod. So here's her garden decor crafting table. If you go in here under structures, you will find this new engram, and the engram's actually called water floor. Although she has used the term decorative water here and on her Discord, and so I like to call it that as well. So it requires 500 fiber to make one of these, which is relatively cheap given the easy acquisition of fiber. And then once you craft that up, this is what you're going to end up with. It's basically a foundation, or at least it looks like one. It snaps to other foundations, and when it does, you get this cool graphic. And other foundations will snap to it. Oh, let's get those where they need to be. And I'll put that over there because we're going to need that next. And then it always snaps a little bit lower than a foundation, though any foundations around it will reference the original. So I guess that makes sense because it's water, so it's kind of like a little pool down below. And then once you've snapped that down, you can turn on the fish animation from the radial menu. And there's one there. Now we're only seeing one. There's actually 3 per unit, but the others are actually down in the rock because I have these foundations lowered so much. All right, so let's pick this up, which kind of brings us to the challenge in using these for aquariums, and that is, how do we get it up high enough to make an aquarium? So a couple ways I've kind of come up with so far. Now actually this water column, this is like a water column. It's quite big. If I pan up here, you can see it's about 4 walls in depth. Of course, most of it in this configuration is buried below ground. So one way, of course, is if you have a slope nearby where you're going to put the aquarium, you could use that to get the height you want by snapping one and then slowly but surely walking it down slope where it's going to grow in relative height as you do. And we'll turn on the fish so you can see. There you go. So there's 3 fish, but the fish are always up in the top block there. The top, what is the equivalent of the top half of a vanilla foundation. They'll always be swimming right at the top there. So that's one way to do it, but of course it's going to be pretty problematic. A lot of trial and error, guesswork, calculation to figure out where to start in order to end up where you want to be, both in position and in height. So I'm not sure how effective that technique would be. It's not what I used. Now, another way to do this, and this gives you a lot more control, is to start off from a rock wall. Now, at this point, I should probably mention a couple little conditions on this whole video. One is that you're going to have in proximity to where you want to build your aquarium a couple of these features, either a slope or preferably a rock wall that you can work off of. And the other one is that you have Structures Plus. Now, you can do a lot of what I'm doing with vanilla. I've tried it. It is doable, but of course, as usual, it's a lot more tedious and difficult, and complicated rather, but it is possible. However, I'm going to assume that if you have this mod, you're probably on a server that's going to have vanilla. It's going to have Structures Plus as well, so it's not going to be an issue. All right, so here with a rock wall now, you can see I get almost continuous variability of where I want to position this in terms of height. So that's nice. You can really get it exactly the height you want, starting off on a rock wall. So what I'm gonna do for the demo is basically recreate what I did upstairs, which is a 2-column wide aquarium surrounded by foundations as the walls. So in order to get 2 walls high, we want 8 squares on this grid. It's 4 squares per wall. So I think that's, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 right there. And then I'm going to go a little bit lower because I want to make sure that the bottom rail of the glass front is right on the ground. It's not, there's no gap underneath it. I'll snap that down. And now that gives us our initial reference point for the height of the aquarium when we get it to where we want it to be, because they're always going to snap to each other at that height. So we will eventually walk it out to here. I want to make these 2 the aquarium, and then that'll be the wall around it, around the back, and there'll be one out on the left side as well. Now at this point I can remove this one. But I'm going to leave this one here because I'm going to need it in a minute, because we're going to pick this one up. Well, we'll pick it up right now. Now, you always want to have, until you get everything finalized, you always want to make sure you leave at least 1 column of water somewhere, because they will only reference themselves. They will not reference, even if you stack up foundations around this now, they will not reference those foundations. They're only going to snap off of each themselves. So you want to make sure you always leave one in place. All right, now the other consideration is you kind of want to, probably sketch around first to figure out what you want to build, but then once you kind of get the general idea, you want to pretty much pre-visualize how this aquarium is going to come out, and then think through the things you're going to put in it or around it, and because that's going to make a difference on the sequence in which you build, because there's certain things you have to do before you do other things. Namely, anything you want in the water column, you need to put it down before you put the water column down, because you can't, and I'll bring up a piece of coral here, you cannot snap them inside the water column. You have to put it down first and snap the water over it. So so that's what we're going to do here with these 2. Now, never mind my guy here. Is he going to be in the way? Well, slightly, but that's okay. Now, what I want to do next is create a little frame around where I'm going to have the aquarium so that it's easier for me to see where I'm going to snap my coral inside. So we'll start to build the backup. Now, the very first piece you snap, foundation you snap around the water is going to always snap at the top. A little odd. But then once you get that, you can snap below it. And then from there, we can work out here. Those will be the 2 pieces that are going to be the back of the aquarium. Now, I'm going to pull this one out because I don't need it. And then we'll come around here and let's now create a frame around the bottom. So we'll snap one here to get our spacing out to here, and a couple out here, and one over there. Okay, now let's pick this one up. All right, so this is going to be the bottom of our aquarium, and this gives us a nice framework to make sure we get our coral placed correctly. So we'll bring up our piece of coral, and this is a different one than I used up top. This one is, what's this one called? Coral Reef number 4. Okay, so these are all from her trees mod, by the way. You'll need that mod to do these. So let's get a little aerial view. So this one's kind of a neat one. It's a little bit higher than the ones I put up there, which works better, I think, in a too high aquarium. And it's got a nice shape for easily placing inside the aquarium. So we don't care if it hangs over this way a little bit, because we're going to have walls around it that will hide it. So we'll kind of get it where we want it. It's about right. All right, there we go. And then maybe we want to put, I don't know, a couple of these things in. So we'll put one of these over here. And now if you want to put lights in, now's the time to do that as well. We'll put a couple here, maybe one there. And how about one over here? All right, good enough. So that's everything we want inside the aquarium. All right, now another consideration is if you want to paint the backdrop of the aquarium, which I like to do, and if you don't have access to the back of this, then you might want to do that right now, because once you put the sides and the top on it, you won't be able to get to this if you don't have access to the back. So I'm not gonna worry about that right now because I do have access, but again, remember to do that before you go any further. And now, now's the time when we're all done with what we want in the aquarium. Now's the time to put the water blocks back. Because before we do any more building around it, because the more you build around it, the more finicky getting these to snap becomes. So we got one there and one there. In particular, if you put the second row of foundations behind it, then they really start getting in the way of trying to get these to snap where you want. They'll start snapping in the wrong spot and overlapping things. So that's time to do it. Now, the other thing you want to do right now, remember to turn the fish on right away, because once you seal it up, it's hard to get back in there to do that, and you might have to remove some sidewalls to get to it. Okay, so at this point, we're ready to start building up the aquarium around it. Or the walls. Let's remove these because we do not need them. And I'm a big advocate for putting down no more pieces than is absolutely necessary, especially in a build like this where I got too much already. Alright, so now we can build up around here. Now, at this point, I could do it this way, hang this side off, but I don't recommend it because it has a tendency to jump over here at the last second and replace your water. So we'll work our way around from here. Oops, wrong piece. There we go. And there we go. And now we can remove this one. And do the same here. All right. And then we'll come around the back here and we'll put these pieces up. Up. Let's remove that. That happens sometimes. Okay. And again, we don't need this piece or this one, so I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to do a little pause right here. And the reason I say we don't need it is we won't see it from the front. So if the visibility on the side's an issue, you may want to put them in there. All right, so now, since we have access to the back, we can paint all of these right now. All right. So that is the basis of our aquarium right there. Now we just need to add the roof and the glass in front. Now, let me bring those down in position so they're ready to go. Now you can snap both ceilings, oops, there, and walls to the water itself. But the problem with walls, well, both actually have issues, but the problem with the walls is when you snap it to the water, it actually embeds inside the water, and then you can no longer access it. So the top one you can from the very top, because if you look carefully, you can see it does hang out the top a little bit. But any of these down here, they're going to be fully embedded in the water and you won't be able to get to them. So that means we got to get the wall on the outside of the water. And the way we'll do that is doing the little trick with hanging some ceilings off the front. So first let me get up here. Okay, so of course my crossbow broke on that last shot, so I had to go get a new one. All right, so we're going to put the ceiling on. Now, there's a couple different snap points here. One is to the foundations, which is really the one we want. And the other one is that little bit higher one, which is the water. Now, we don't want that one. We can kind of screw around here until we get the lower one, but I don't recommend doing it this way because of that. It has a tendency to jump down to that one, and then once it does, you can't get to it. You got to pick up the water, basically start all over again. So my recommended way to do this is to start out here. It gives us a little bit more secure snap point to get these. That'll work better from over here, I think. There we go. And that one. And one out here. Now you can use, for these overhanging ones, you can of course use any ceiling. Let's just pick this one up. We don't need it. Now we have this little workaround for getting the walls on the front. So, we want to make sure we're not snapping to the water, and we're also not snapping to the ceiling over the water. We want to snap to these, facing the other way. So we want, and I'm using the rotation button to get that position. And we'll do one here. And these are usually automatic. There we go. So now we got the front of the aquarium. It is outside the water, so we can now access it, and we can paint them. We're going to use this color instead. And I think we need that one. There we go. And we can also change the model. And I think we'll go with corner, I think it's corner B. Yep. And corner A. Yep. And corner C. And corner D. So that gives us a nice full window for the front of the aquarium. And of course we can go up and paint the top ones as well if we want. We could also have used stone or anything else up there, and I did that on another one I'll show you. Alright, so now we can remove these, and the front will stay nicely. And that's it. That's pretty much the aquarium done. Now, of course, you can add all the, treatment you want to the front of this and anything else you want to add around it, which I'll show you a little bit more of up on top. Now, here's another one I've done. This one's just a single high, which I quite like. That's the lower of the corals, as opposed to the one I just used. You can see it's a lot taller over there. So for a 2-wall, I kind of like this coral because it fills that gap between the fish. For 1 high, I think these other ones look really nice. Now the way I did this is actually, the water itself is actually 1.5 foundations high. And how I did that was I same way I did it before. I got it the right height off of the rock to begin with in this position. Then I moved it out to here. And then, actually I didn't even move it out there. I got the starter one here, and then I snapped a foundation there, and it allowed me to put the lower foundation on. And then I snapped a second one over there. And then I was able to put my coral and lights and everything on top of those foundations. And once I had that, then I could snap the water column over. It snapped over the coral and the foundations, and it worked really nicely. I didn't really have any issues with that. And that gave me 1.5 height. And then I kind of finished out the same way I did the other one. I could remove that back water column, put the back in. And then I snapped off of the back. I snapped the 2 ceilings, which in this case are stone. And then from those you can hang the side walls. Now there's a little bit of an issue here with, now I was a little sloppy there because I was in a hurry, but you might want to get that adjusted right. But you can see there's a little bit of the water shows over the rock. If that's an issue, you might want to consider how you're going hide that. You could probably use some of her ivy to hang on the front of that and cover that up. Anyway, so then once I got the water in, then I finished this with the glass. Same technique I used on the other one with the ceilings hanging over. And then did some columns on the side here with a little top piece on front. So just to kind of tell you how I did that, because if you've worked with these S+, you may be asking right now how I got that to align with that half wall. Because S+, let's bring these down. S+, as you may or may not know, really difficult, if not impossible, to get it to align with a half wall. So even if I go to corner snaps, I'm either going to get that position or this position. I can't get that to line up like that side did. So the way I did that was just to snap 2 here. Then if you snap a vanilla foundation over that, it will align with the top. Then you can come in here, and if you get in just the right position, right, just saw it. Okay, there it is. We can now pick up that upper S+ foundation. Okay, so that's how I got it to align with the top. And then of course these are just railings that I have changed out to walls, half walls, so you can kind of do that either way. I like both actually. And that's how I built this little aquarium. So I really like this one. I'm probably going to do one of these out at our build in the little community platform village out in the desert. I think that's very neat. All right, so let's run up top, and I'll show you a couple other things I did up there before we wind up, and I will meet you up there. Alright, so I'm up on the top of my aquarium upstairs now, and you can see I also added a couple of these. These are the medium, small, no, they're the small hanging lanterns from her garden decor mod also. Just to cast a little more illumination on the fish, make them show up a little bit brighter in the aquarium. Alright, let's get back off of here. Alright, so, and then of course I did a little bit different treatment on the front. I went with double stack on the walls above, since this is a little bit bigger, and I think that proportionally looked a little bit better. So that's a half wall, or a railing turned to a half wall and a railing on top. And that matched the S+ pillars okay for height. And then the only other thing that's different with this one, the one below, is it's actually a little shorter than 2 walls. And the reason was because of the shape of the wall back there, I had a little issue getting exactly the right position on the water column. So it was either a little too tall or a little too short. So I made it a little bit shorter, which put the bottom rail of the lower window down below ground. So I filled that in with, because I want that railing, I like the look of that railing on the bottom, or that side. So I had to use, I used metal foundations, fence foundations there to create that effect. Unfortunately, even though there are 6 paint regions on a metal foundation, fence foundation, and you can put paint in all of them, it does not actually paint the fence foundation. So that's kind of too bad, but I actually think it works out okay. I don't really have any issue with that. I think it looks neat. So it makes it a little bit shorter, which also shrinks the gap a little bit between the fish and the coral. So that worked fine for me. Also kept this from going too high into the rock over there. And then I just decorated up with some little benches here so my guests can sit out and enjoy the aquarium and relax. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's how I did it. Let's turn around here. So I hope you enjoyed that, found it interesting and informative, maybe gave you some ideas how you can build your own aquariums. So if you have any questions or suggestions, or maybe you've come up with some techniques I haven't figured out yet, please do share them. I'm always interested in reading what you have to say and answering your comments. So once again, I want to thank you all for watching all the way through, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye-bye for now.